call meeting to order. We will start with the flag salute.
Please to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pray with me. Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed on us. We are blessed with our families, our jobs, our children, and life in general. Please be with our nation and the world as we fight COVID and sometimes each other. Coming together as a community for the common good is where we should all be heading. We thank our staff, teachers, administrators, community, and businesses for our schools. Without the caring individuals and groups in our city and county, for our students would be without direction to succeed, nor the compassion to share the good that we have all around us. We would also ask to keep our men and women of the armed forces close as they serve and protect here at home and abroad. Thank you for our first responders as they brave many challenges unselfishly for all of us. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Roll call.
Mr. Newsom?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. Rowland? Present. Mrs. Truth?
Present.
Mrs. Zimmershed?
Here. Do we have any public comments this evening? No public comments. Okay. We have reports with potential board discussion. Alternative education report by Carla Streeter.
I don't have the normal report that I usually have because we were not evaluated this year. All alt-ed schools were given waivers, probably most people were. So I kind of thought, we did have 49 graduates in all this mess, but I kind of thought I'd just go over a little bit about the virtual program because I am in charge of that also. And I'm not sure that you guys are completely aware of how that works and what all it entails to get a student enrolled in a virtual program. So, and I kind of want to take the opportunity to kind of brag on my staff a little bit because they did an awesome job. So in the past, I've had a max of 9 kids in virtual. I've done it all myself. I've called on them. I've checked on them. I've done their progress. And then last year, as you know, we went from 9 to over 200 in just a little over a month's time. So each one of those students has to be interviewed by me. They have to meet with me. We go over a grad check, and we talk about the classes they want to take. We set up an account for them in Edgenuity. We have to give them a username and a password. We have to enroll them in the classes that they want to take. And then somebody has to show them how to use it. So one of my teachers will take them in another room, have them log on, make sure everything works, make sure they know how to use it. And then they explain to them about how to take a test, where to go to take a test, how often they need to be online working, how many tasks they need to do. So each student is about a 30-minute process, and we did over 222 between August 1st and time school started. I had Curtis and Shelley were kind enough to let me have some help, so they let 2 of my teachers come in and help me get everything set up, and then we did that on top of our regular Wildcat stuff. My teachers also trained all of the middle school virtual teachers, all of the high school virtual teachers, and then all of the high school Edgenuity teachers because they were all new with Edgenuity. So they did trainings once we got up and going for all of the teachers. So they did all of that. They worked creating classes in the middle school because the middle school had no classes created. So they created classes for the middle school teachers, and then they showed everybody how to make those phone calls because we call once a week on every virtual student. So there's somebody making a parent contact, telling them what the grade is, telling them how long their student's working, and answering any questions that they might have. And then on Fridays, I go through, and everybody that hasn't worked, I call the parent and talk to them about what they need to be doing and what their student needs to be doing. So virtual takes up a huge, huge block of our time. But I felt like that last year, after we kind of got the groove second semester, it went a lot smoother. But virtual is very time consuming, and my teachers just did amazing with all of that. My English teacher, Mandy Fields, graded all of the English papers for every student enrolled in Edgenuity, and there were over 300 kids enrolled. And that's not even, some of them might be taking 2 or 3 English classes. So she graded English papers for every student that was enrolled, either Wildcat at the high school, through virtual, whatever. She graded all those, and she's continuing to do that. So she's grading English papers for about, 150, 160 kids right now. And then Coach Swain did all of the contact tracing, because virtual kids, even though they're not necessarily in a classroom, they're still coming up and taking tests. So we had to keep track of who was here to take a test, what time they were here, where they sat. And then if that person actually did come down with COVID, we had to look and see, were they there at this time, who was around them. So there was a little bit of contact tracing even with the virtual students. And then if they were virtual and they were quarantined, we unlocked tests for them so that they didn't have to come up to the registration center and test. And Coach Kimbrell kept track of that, so he would unlock the tests, and then he would check every day who was back, who was not quarantined any longer, and then he would lock those tests back, because those tests really need to be proctored. We don't like for them to take them at home. And then Coach Swain did eligibility. We were not used to having as many kids on our eligibility list, but our eligibility list grew huge last year. So Swain did all of the eligibility for all of the virtual students. And then we had a lot of virtual students that liked to come to us and test. They felt more comfortable with our teachers and would come to test. So we had to keep, Mr. Harris kept track of who was in testing at our school. He kept them in his room. That way we knew that they were just in one classroom. They weren't all over the place. We also did math and English tutoring. So if they were virtual and they were struggling with math, then we would tell them, come up at this time, and Coach Kimbrell will help you with your math. If you need help writing your English papers, Ms. Fields will help you with your English papers. So we did a lot of tutoring with the virtual kids in their math and their English, because those are the 2 subjects that seems to be the hardest online. And then right now, we're still with virtual, and so my teachers are still doing trainings. We had all new people at the testing center again this year, so they're still doing those trainings, and Kimbrell and Swain are doing the eligibility and the quarantines, and just trying to keep our head above water right now with the beginning of the school year. So that is what's going on at Alta Ed. Does anybody have any questions?
What's your number of students in virtual this year?
Right now, there are 53. I have 10 that I need to get a hold of on the list. We only have room for 65, and then we have 15 through Wildcat. So there are 15 and 52. There's 67 right now.
I thought you told us last year you had room for like 135 or so.
No, at Wildcat, well, but I have Wildcat kids.
Right.
So I don't have, I can't fill it up with virtual. I won't have room for kids wanting to come to school. So we just left room for 15 virtual at Wildcat, so we could still have our regular kids at Wildcat. Because I have a waiting list at Wildcat right now.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody?
Sounds like you're doing a good job, Carla.
Thank you, Judy.
As always.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. All right, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we have 2019 college remediation report by Mr. Dent.
Okie dokie. Excuse me, sorry. I'm Shane Dent, principal at the high school. I've had the opportunity to meet quite a few of you, and wanted to say hello to those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to formally introduce myself to. I have the responsibility, this is one of those state requirements, to present this information to the school board annually, and it's always a tricky one, in my opinion, because it's one of those that there is data, and it's good data, but it's not always actionable data. And some of that relates to the fact that it's a little bit of a delay. As you may or may not know, this is data from 2019. So obviously, these are kids that have graduated over a year and a half ago and giving us some feedback as far as those respective students, and not all of our students that go to college, but some of our students that went off to college, and the percent of remedial courses that they had to take in math or reading or et cetera. So it's a little bit strange how that data comes in. Definitely one of those things that historically, a lot of administrators are looking for some trends in that data. What is something that's consistent from year to year? It is, for a large part, obviously based on admissions test. And for Ponca City, that would be ACT. And so for looking at that, that's kind of a side note that I hope to kind of maybe take a peek at as we look at some of this information. Historically, we always try to give you some references here. The first reference is kind of looking at the difference between the percentages at Ponca City High School and the state. And so you can see kind of some of the numbers that we have. One of those is looking at that third number. That third line is math. And for Ponca City High School, that was one that was really jumped off the page at me. But looking in the past, it was less than 10% with the 2018 group of kids. And so this is one of those that doesn't really give you a trend line that you can look at. Last year and the year before, there was a little bit of a note, or at least some concern towards our reading scores. And those have held a little bit lower than in the past, but still at a rate that causes a little bit of concern. And I can definitely see why former high school principals have started to dedicate resources towards those areas. A little bit of comparables, just kind of schools our size, a little bit geographically, and also kind of our makeup. We looked at Ponca City, Enid, Stillwater, and Choctaw. And you can see that there's some comparisons across the board. Our reading numbers were actually a little bit higher percentage last year. They've gone down, but we're still a little bit higher than where we want to be compared to our neighbors. Math, surprisingly, although it took a leap up, Enid remained somewhat consistent. They were at about 26%, went to 28.7, which is where we were with that 2019 group as well. So you can see kind of some comparisons across the board between Ponca City, Enid, Stillwater, and Choctaw. And again, like I say, it's one of those that it's weird data, and I'll try to see if I can't help make a little bit of sense out of that. What we're looking at when we look at those remediation rates is oftentimes it's left up to those individual schools to determine where that remediation line is set. For example, NOC is looking at a student that might make an 18 in a subcategory, math, ELA, etc. And so they're looking at any student that scores below that as a candidate for a remedial or a zero-level course. Well, just like everything else in our world, right? Data is always changing, and the way we calculate is always changing. I don't know why. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe like a really smart superintendent told me one time, numbers don't lie, but liars use numbers. It's maybe something like that. I don't know. But one of the things that's, new to our field is option, the ACT option. Last year the big buzz was students don't have to take college algebra for certain degrees anymore. When we went to school, no matter if you were just a simple social studies guy like myself, you had to take college algebra. But now, as you know, college algebra is not required if you're going to be a social worker or an art major or a whatever. And so it'll be interesting to see what impact that has. And so math is one of those that we are looking at, but we're not overly concerned because it's a blip. We were less than 10%. We're jumping up to around 28%. We know that we're going to have kids that will elect not to take college algebra. They'll be qualified to take a math class if their major isn't in a math field. So that's drastically going to manipulate that number. Reading, though, is definitely one that we understand that we need to concentrate on. We've always talked about this, try to think without using words. It just doesn't work. So reading is important. We definitely want to look at that. But when we look at ACT scores, this is another look at what's going on. So as you know, in the state, with our school report card, at the high school level, our proficiency or our academic performance is based on ACT in the 11th grade. Students that score a 21 or higher are considered proficient. Now remember, we got two different numbers working here. 21 or higher is proficient on state scores as far as school report card goes. But less than 19 is where you're looking at possible remediation rates. So as you look across here, you can see that, for Ponca City, we had 30% of our students in that same year that had scored proficient, a 21 or above on the ACT, and 27% that scored proficient in math. And so when you look across the board in our county, the performance of Ponca City has traditionally been pretty good. Which kind of gets us to the most important part. So what are we doing with this information? What are we doing with this data? Well, the first thing we want to know is who are we talking about? And we're talking about 101 2019 graduates who were classified as first-time freshmen. So we're not talking about the kids that went to concurrent enrollment. We're taking those out of the equation. We're looking at some of those students that maybe didn't have those opportunities for concurrent because of ACT scores, but then elected to go to college after high school, which I think is great. I think that's wonderful that we have that many students that are willing to go and give it a try and enroll at Cali, enroll at NOC, enroll wherever to pursue advanced degrees. NOC's course, as we discussed before, is at 18. Redlands is set at 17. I just happen to know that because my son attends Redlands, and I was really worried that he might have to do that. So the important thing is for us at the high school is to continue the work that's already been put in place. The foundation is there. The including of the Reading Plus curriculum that is now mandatory, it's worked in, it's embedded in our ELA classes. Our ACT math workshop that Mr. Masboudi is continuing, and our alignment with our college and career readiness standards to our curriculum maps, basically taking those ACT standards and continuing to make sure that we mirror those with our Oklahoma State standards, and we're giving good instruction at the level that our kids need in order to be successful. So I really feel like there are a few things to point out. Reading, our literacy scores are always of the utmost important, but I think the most important thing to do is to continue the path that's already been laid out. Questions?
How about a comment?
Yes.
You being the new kid on the block, I'll give you a break this time.
All right.
But for about 10 years now, Stillwater has consistently kicked our backside. So that's going to be your challenge to get us a lot closer to Stillwater.
Is to take out Stillwater?
Well, I don't want to take them out, or I would rather you improve us up to Stillwater. But they consistently have been beating on us pretty bad.
I'm with you. And you know what? I think the thing that we need to focus on, and it'll take care of this, is improving our ACT scores.
Yeah.
That's where the leadership before me has really dedicated a lot of energy, and I totally agree 100%. We need to focus on not 2 years ago data. We need to focus on our kids right now doing the best they can on the ACT now. So yeah, I'm with you.
That brings up the second question. Why are we a year and a half behind? Why can't we do more current data on this?
You know, the data is obviously, and here's the thing, and I could get on my soapbox on this one. That's why I kind of was tiptoeing around the usefulness of the data. It is, and some of it, like we said, it's 101 of our college-bound students, right? So that's not all of them. It doesn't include students that went out of state. It doesn't include students that did concurrent. It's talking about a fraction of those kids from that class that went to. And so it's basically pulling out, in some ways, the bottom group that would be going to college and telling you what their remediation rate is. And so obviously, that number can change. Last year, that number wasn't 101 students, it was 120 students. The year before, so if you look at, well, what's Stillwater's? How many of those kids do concurrent because OSU's right there? Are we talking about 50 kids? That could be a big difference. And so it's really not fair to do apples to apples, but we do feel like it's full disclosure. We want transparency. We don't want to hide anything. But we definitely want an ACT for our juniors. I think that's a fair comparison.
Well, since Robin made a comment, I'd like to make one too. But I forwarded a book suggestion to Delana Hawkins, and it's called Attack of the Teenage Brain, and it's by John Medina. But it really talks about executive function in secondary curriculum and how it's helpful. And then I think everything that Ponca City is doing on top of that with social emotional learning is really going to help boost up, hopefully, our students' sense of self-worth that they can achieve because they've been tested to death since they were in third grade. So once they get into junior year, they're not really wanting to perform as well as they could on an ACT. So I think that really giving our students that support that they need in their social emotional, world, as well as, recognizing what our brain is and isn't, and what it can be and what it can't be is important. So I don't know, just maybe give the book a listen.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
My plug.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
You bet.
Okay, next we have Superintendent's report with potential board discussion. She'll be talking about proposed board policy changes, enrollment updates, and COVID-19 updates.
We'll start with our policy changes. Each year in September, we report the proposed policy changes, and we report those a month in advance, and then the board considers in October. So the directors will review each policy that pertains to them. And I'll start by talking about the school board required policies, and let's talk just a little bit about board meetings held via video conference or teleconference. Now, this is pursuant to Senate Bill 131. We are no longer allowed to conduct fully virtual meetings, so we need to rescind that policy. That will require board approval. There is also a policy on school board meetings. It's also required due to Senate Bill 1031, which removed temporary amendments to Open Meeting Act, allowing for fully virtual board meetings. It defines what a regular, a continued, a reconvened, a special, and emergency meeting is, and it allows meetings by video conference as long as it meets certain criteria. And the criteria is that we have to have a quorum in person, and then if someone needs to video conference in, that has to be posted where the video conference is occurring, and it has to be open to the public, so public comments public can attend at that point. If a board member is participating by video conference, they cannot participate in executive session, and you cannot vote by video conference as well. So it would just be for a board member who couldn't attend and just wanted to attend the meeting and witness what is going on. And any time you feel like you have questions, just jump in here and ask. There is also Board of Education notification of meetings. It outlines the procedures for notices to the county clerk for regular, special, and emergency board meetings. It also addresses notification of continuing meetings, meeting held by video conference, and posting meeting information on the school district website. And we will continue to use the traditional method of posting agendas. Now, in this policy, there was an option. We could continue our traditional method, which we post 24 hours on the window and then give a hard copy to our local media outlets 24 hours in advance. The other option was an electronic option, but we would have to disseminate that information 48 hours in advance. And you board members know that we're sometimes down to the wire changing those, changing the agenda with so many things that come through such a large district. So it's the recommendation to keep with our traditional method of posting agendas. Also want to talk a little bit about a quorum board meeting procedure. It defines a quorum as a majority of the board members. It outlines the procedures if a quorum is present at the meeting location, but meeting must be moved to another location. So let's say we met in the boardroom and it was just too small. We had too big of a crowd. We would need to move to maybe the seminar room. So it outlines those procedures. Next, we have community relations activities, and these are required by Jason Levitt. And Jason, if you just want to stand up and talk about broadcasting and streaming rights first.
Okay, the first one on broadcast and streaming rights, our local senator, Bill Coleman, is the one that really spearheaded this due to going to other schools and not being allowed to do video stream. And the big thing is he felt that, along with a lot of people, that we have the right to share that with our people who can't travel, and get that live feed to family members, school people, community members. So this went ahead and went and passed through the Senate. We get every bit of broadcast rights when we go to schools like Bixby, where we're not allowed to video stream the events at that time, because Bixby had sole right. And so each person would have to pay a certain fee before being allowed to watch that. Visiting teams must have one of the following: a Board of Education approved agreement between the school and broadcasting group, or a curriculum program that is student-based that provides streaming for the team's home games. So again, it's very convenient for all of our people locally. The next one is interference with peaceful conduct of activities. Senate Bill 403 prevents a person or group from willfully disrupting, interfering, or disrupting school business, including school meetings, operations, employee, agent, official, or representative of the district. If a violation occurs, the following procedures will apply: proper notice to leave the property or property used by the school with students present. If the offender returns within 6 months without written permission, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. The appeal process: first appeal is a written letter to the superintendent within 5 days of notice. Final appeal, written letter to the board clerk within 5 days of the superintendent's decision. Optional appeal process: superintendent's decision is reviewed by his or her designee, and that decision is final. The last portion of it that didn't fit within community relations is because it's more a staffing issue, a personnel matter, and that was workplace harassment and violence.
And that's already addressed in personnel policy. So at this point, Jason, the board will need to consider for next month the optional appeal process.
Sure.
So in case they have questions about that.
Let's see. Our next one here is emergency medical service at district athletic events and activities. This is dubbed as the Riley Rule, named after Riley Boatwright. He was a 13-year-old football player that played in Lexington, Oklahoma. It was said that the emergency medical service took far too long to get there and take action and take care of the matter, and Mr. Boatwright ended up passing away in the hospital. So what this law does is schools need to develop emergency action plans for each site for practices, any kind of activities that are held. The plan shall include maps, assigned medical administrator who is a current district employee, define responsibilities of on-site personnel, medical, and school officials, a list of medical equipment and locations of AEDs if available. Each emergency action plan must be posted in the facility and distributed to all school officials and visiting schools. Document actions taken after emergency and determine if necessary changes are to be made. And that's post any kind of incident that happens.
Do we already have somebody who's going to be our assigned medical administrator, or is that something that's going to be at cost to the district?
No, we utilize our athletic trainer for that.
Okay, so it's always going to be a current, so it's just
Yes.
something that gets added on to their responsibilities?
Right.
But I don't think we have the medical trainer at all events, do we?
Not at all events, but we facilitate that, and our coaches are well aware if it's outside of your wheelhouse, you need to call 911 immediately.
I'm sorry I didn't introduce Jason. For those of you that don't know, I'm Jason Levitt, our athletic director. Any questions in regard to community relation activities, proposed policies?
I assume Jason will be writing up all those.
They're already done, and I've already met with our local EMS and had those signed off.
Good job.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay, here are some required instruction policies, and Terry Vogel is going to speak to you about Reading Sufficiency Act. Terry is our Associate Director of Elementary Curriculum.
We receive funding every year for the Reading Sufficiency Act. It's based on the number of students at the beginning of the year that are identified as being below level on a screener. And that screener that we use is the STAR test. And so we do receive more than $2,500 in RSA funding. Therefore, starting in 2022, we will have to spend at least 10% of that RSA budget on evidence-based PD. I'm not worried about that because we spend more than that already on evidence-based PD, but they will be, the Oklahoma State Department of Ed will be putting out a list. And what we currently spend most of our training on is pain phonics, pre-K through second grade teachers. So any new teachers in those grades that come into the district, we train them on that. I think it was 13 teachers this last school year in pain phonics. And then also Literacy First, which is a evidence-based professional development program, and it is based on the science of reading.
Is that what you use for early education assessment still, or do you use STAR that early?
We use STAR because that's what is, that we use STAR for RSA, but we do still use the Literacy First battery of assessments for interventions.
Okay, next, the length of the school year. And let me talk to you a little bit about the length of the school year policy. This came about because schools are going to have to apply if they continue with a 4-day school week. So it incorporates amendments to the Oklahoma statute to provide local education agencies 3 options to choose for the 180-day school year. Option A is what we currently use, and that would be the recommendation to move forward. That's the school hours policy. It's 1,080 hours with a minimum of 165 days of instruction. Option B would be for these schools who are currently on a 4-day school week. This will be the last year that they can be on a 4-day school week unless they apply for a waiver. So this is a school hours policy, but schools can request a waiver from the State Department of Education for 1 or more sites that includes less than 165 days. And there are quite a bit of a criteria. It has to do with performance, it has to do with dropout rate, it has to do with budgeting, and it has to be sent to the State Department of Education for approval prior to June 30th. Since we're not a 4-day-a-week school district, then that would not be the recommendation. And then option C is a commitment of LEAs to offer classroom instruction at a minimum of 180 days. And that is in the class instruction. With our 165 days, we can also count professional development days and parent-teacher conferences as well. So the recommendation would be to stay with our current option. Next is business management, and this is in regard to procurement. Either Brett or Adam will present here. I'm guessing Brett. Brett Smith, our Executive Director of Operations.
And this will probably be this will be the last board meeting, then I'll get to address the board. On the 11th, the next board meeting, I'll be representing the district in a mediation hearing for our roofing lawsuit, so I'll be in San Antonio. So I thought I might as well do this instead of Adam. He can do it next month.
So this is it, your last
This is
board
it.
meeting.
That's kind of crazy. It feels kind of strange.
Special
So,
or an emergency?
so thank you for letting me do this. The first one is our limit. You know, a lot of times whenever we do policy changes, it makes more work or it's more rules, it's just more stuff to do. This one's actually a happy one. So the Competitive Bidding Act requires that we take competitive bids on anything of construction or improvements of schools and repairs, and it was always had a limit of 50,000. November 1, it goes to 100,000. So we got a little bit more leeway in getting some work done without going through the bidding process, more money, bonds, all those kinds of things. So that's a good thing. Our child nutrition participates in a cooperative. So the policy, their procurement policy, basically is through the cooperative that they've joined with how many school districts? 52 school districts around the state in order to give us a really good deal for buying in such quantities. And Edmond is the lead school district, and they take care of all the paperwork that's involved in this thing. We've got some small things that we purchased that's outside that cooperative, and we just follow the normal procurement rules that we have currently. The next one is the sale of surplus property. This one is basically, we're doing the same thing we've always done, except they've added a caveat that if we are going to sell leased property, we can put it up for an auction and so forth, and we get a competitive bid for the general public of the lease, then the leasee gets first option of refusal. So they can purchase it, but they get to purchase it for the same price that this board would have accepted otherwise during that bidding process. They have 30 days once that offer is made to make up their mind whether they want to buy it or not, and then that they can opt to do that. Now, there's also a little caveat for cash. If there was anything that was a bid that was of a non-cash item, that lessee gets to pay that offset in cash in order to come up with the same amount of money. So if there's any questions? I had the easy ones.
Okay, next we have Terry, who's going to talk to us about some federal program changes in policy.
Federal programs is always really being really careful about conflict of interest. So the conflict of interest mandatory disclosure regarding contracting, this has to do with board members. We have a conflict of interest policy for our staff, and this is for board members. So basically it just says all board members are expected to maintain high ethical standards and use good judgment in conducting school business. Any board member who violates these policies will be referred to the Ethics Commission and referred for criminal prosecutions. Disciplinary actions could include termination or prosecution in regard to violation of standards of conduct and conflicts of interest. So again, we are following federal program guidelines, and the number to turn anybody in for violation of federal programs, or if you have suspicions of that, is found on our federal programs website.
Thank you. Questions there? And we sign assurances for everything we do in regard to federal programs, so we've always been held to those high standards and don't deviate from them at all. All right, Jennifer Dye, our Executive Director of Human Resources, is going to talk to you about some policies, and the first one, I'll let her hit it.
All right. Well, the leave under the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, that was rescinded. As you know, last year there were lots of leaves and forms with COVID, but that all expired December 31st of 2020. Under support personnel leave, there was a breastfeeding portion, and that was rescinded because there is a new lactation policy, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So the lactation policy, that was in response to Senate Bill 121. Employees who are lactating must be provided a reasonable paid break time each day to use the lactation room. The break time may run concurrently with any break time that's already provided, and the room needs to be private, sanitary, and free from intrusion of students or other employees.
Questions there? Okay, and Jennifer has some more.
All right, so with the suspension, dismissal, and non-reemployment of teachers, this policy has been revised as a result of Senate Bill 13, which requires that a teacher whose certificate has been suspended by the Oklahoma State Board of Education be placed on suspension while proceedings are pending. Districts have two versions to choose from. I'm recommending that we choose option 1 for consideration, and it's almost identical to our current policy. The teacher has completed 4 consecutive complete school years in the district and was granted career status by the BOE after the applicable principal and superintendent petitioned the BOE to grant the teacher career status. We're recommending omitting option 2, which says it's omitting the optional language that says, although the law permits the board to approve a superintendent's recommendation that ineffective teachers be retained, the board will not approve the recommendation.
And when she talks ineffective, this is in regard to their TLE score through the Marzano evaluation system that we use. Questions there? Okay. This is suicide awareness training and prevention, and Dr. Delana Hawkins is going to present this. She is our Associate Director of Secondary Curriculum.
The suicide awareness training and prevention policy is implementing training for our staff this year and then on a biennial basis from this year on. So every other year for the staff. And it states beginning with the 22-23 school year, the school may provide training to address suicide awareness and prevention to 7th through 12th graders, but that's down the road. It requires the course outline for the training curriculum be made available on the school district's website. Resources for those at risk of self-harm are currently provided on our district website. And there is optional wording about the superintendent or designee or designated suicide prevention coordinator establish procedures for identifying suicidal tendencies and high-risk behavior, including behavior that poses an immediate threat of serious harm to the student or others, and intervention or post-intervention measures, such as when to assess a suicide risk, offer counseling, contact parents or legal guardians, and to call law enforcement, healthcare providers, or the Department of Human Services. And the optional wording is not needed, in my opinion, but this is your decision. But because our district does have procedures in place to identify students at risk of self-harm, as well as contact to in and out of district resources.
Very defined procedures that we use in all of our sites and kind of facilitated by our district therapist. Thank you. Okay, for students, this is student residency, Terry Vogel.
She's getting the workout.
She is getting the workout. She's got some more hair too.
Okay. This has to do with registration, and that's why I'm here. LEAs consider residency requirements met if parents and guardians are transferred or pending transfers for military installations. So this would probably be a policy that really is pertinent to communities that have like Tinker Air Force Base and over at Enid, that kind of thing. And it doesn't mean it might not affect us, but it probably won't as much as it will those communities. If there is a parent that has an active duty military orders in place, and they can establish proof of residency, we have got to register those students. So we can't turn them away. So basically, that's what it comes down to.
Even if our classes are full.
Correct, yes. Even if our classes are full, we have to take them. But they do have to show that they have military orders, and they have to establish residency. So they'd have to show us proof of residence.
Okay, and Terry,
Well,
this
Shelley?
may- Yes.
What does LEA stand for?
Local Education Agency.
Okay, that's what I was thinking it was something like that.
Okay, and Terry, we're back here to student transfers.
Oh, go. Just stay up there.
And this next one's yours too. I'm just going to pull them both up.
Okay, so this is School Bill 783, and it has to do with open transfers. So we have 3 different types of transfers in the district. We have our in-district transfers, which are the transfers that parents want from school to school. We have board policy in place for that. We used to have emergency transfers, and we have open transfers. So this goes into effect in January of '22. And let's see.
And we'll have a new policy from our policy writers in regard to open transfers, transferrings to other districts beginning in January too.
So it did do away with emergency transfers. And so pretty much, to me, the best way to explain it would be no more emergency transfers and no deadline on open transfers. Used to be the deadline was the end of May for an open transfer, and then you could apply for an emergency transfer. But emergency transfers are going to go away. Still, the deadline for in-district transfers are May 1st. So, and then we have one about deployed parents. Districts must provide transfers to students of deployed military families regardless of the classroom limits. This policy pertains to full-time active duty and members of the military reserves. Any questions about that?
Question for Jason. OSSAA still has not given in to the open transfer yet, have they?
Yeah, the association rules still apply.
So for any extracurricular activity, you could not participate. You could still transfer to that school, Ponca to Tonkwall, let's say, but you could not participate in extracurricular things that are approved by the OSSAA.
Right, the only way, it's for 1 calendar year, the only way that they could be able to participate in another school on a transfer is on a hardship basis.
Okay. But that's still, after a year, they may change it again. My understanding. Who knows what they're going to do? Okay.
Who knows? Okay, so we have some more students. This is the Infectious and Communicable Disease Policy. This is pursuant to House Bill 1014. And this changes up the language a little bit that forbids students with communicable disease from attending school and require each student's parents or guardians and the school district, it used to say teacher, to exclude them from school until the expiration of an ordered period of isolation or quarantine or permission to return has been given by the local or state Department of Health. Now, the key term here is that it's been issued by the State Department of Health or the local Department of Health, whether it be Oklahoma City or Tulsa. So as you know, the State Health Department is no longer issuing quarantines for close contacts. This might have to do with tuberculosis or in isolation, a positive case isolation. So that is pursuant to House Bill 1014. Amy is going to talk to you a little bit about administration of medicine, and Amy Schwartz is our Special Services Director who oversees our school nurses.
This revision to the administration of medicine policy came as a result of Senate Bill 128, which was the Seizure Safe Schools Act. It applies to any school where a student enrolled has a seizure disorder and a seizure rescue medication or other prescription medication for the seizure disorder. The policy outlines the district's responsibilities as far as training. That's training in how to administer, assist in administration, recognize signs and symptoms of when that's needed, staffing requirements. It is an employee at each site that has a student with the seizure disorder. Creation of a seizure action plan for each affected student, parent authorizations for being able to administer that, creating the plan, the parent as a part of that, and collection and dissemination of any necessary documentation. This aligns with our existing policy and procedures for any prescription medication. It just specifically addresses seizures as part of that.
Oh, okay. Okay, Delana Hawkins is going to talk to you about Asvab testing and student access to military recruiters.
This policy basically states we will provide the opportunity for all students in grades 10 through 12 to take the Asvab, or the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, and meet with military personnel. That's the whole policy.
Are they notified?
During school hours, and they'll have that opportunity. They have that opportunity now, but now we have a policy that that also protects that opportunity. Any questions?
Okay, and then finally, we have some housekeeping items that you need to consider because the board does approve changes to policy or all board policy. We needed to update some names of responsible administrators to relevant policies. We are replacing Curtis Layton with Jennifer Dye and anything that has to do with personnel. We are replacing Brett Smith with Adam Leeming, even though he's still here for another month, since you'll be considering policy changes next month. And then we need to delete policy 2.3, Board of Education Community Relations. This policy was actually adopted in 1996, and it speaks to making agendas available to the public, which we already do. And this is redundant now since there's a new policy on posting agenda documents. So, any questions to any of these policies? We present these a month in advance, and then for our public to make any comments, and then we can discuss in committee meetings, and then we will bring these back to you for consideration and approval in October, in the October board meeting. Any questions, discussion, comments? All right. I want to give you just an enrollment update. Now, I realize today is September 13th, but I wanted to give you a site update as of September 1, our September 1 numbers, and go ahead and take a look at those. I've got the comparison from 9/01 of 2020, and our enrollment is up just a little over 200 students, and you can see at all of our sites that we are up. Now, those don't all add up to 4,641 students because the virtual students are included in the numbers. And if you take a look there, as far as our regular sites, we only had one site that had more students in 2020 than in 2021, and that was Lincoln Elementary, and only a difference of 11 students. And then for Wildcat Academy, Teen Pep, we have 87 as of 9/01 versus 100 last year. Take a look at that virtual number. That is a big number difference. On September 1 of last year, we had 555. I believe we started out the year with 604. So several had already gone back to traditional by September 1 of last year versus 95 total this year. Share students, really there's not only a few students difference. So you can see that our numbers are up quite a bit. And I know that we talked about Garfield's numbers a couple of months ago. It might have been last month. We only had 150 at that point, and then we've had a lot more that have come in. So any questions about our enrollment? Our classes are full, and this is a good thing for us. We want our kids back in face-to-face learning.
Does White Eagle still go to Lincoln?
Yes, for the most part. I also want to give you an enrollment by grade level update. And this is per grade level and the available spaces that we have pending our, pursuant to our 5-year plan when we were reducing our class size.
So currently this year, we are hosting 23 students in a pre-K class. Right now, our enrollment is 238, and we have 35 spaces available. And if I go back to Washington last year, we only had 217, so enrollment is up definitely. In kindergarten, we have 353 students. Now, some 2019 legislation went into play this year, and this legislation had to do with 100 million additional dollars returned back to the state aid formula. And at the end of this session, our legislatures bumped up the money that cycled back into the state aid formulas. So the 2019 legislation kicked into play for kindergarten and first grade. That means we can have 20 in a classroom and 9 over per site with a TA. So if a site only has one kindergarten class, they can have 20 in the classroom with 9 over, but they would have a full-time class size TA. If a site has 2 kindergarten classes, they can have 40 in the classroom and then 9 over total. It doesn't matter if you have 1 class or if you have 6 classes, you can only have 9 over with a TA. Now, take a look at our kindergarten. We have 8 spots available. We are a public school. We do not deny anyone access to public schools. So with only 8 available, that's a little bit too close for comfort for us. If we have 10 over, we have to hire a new teacher. And you know that it's getting hard to hire teachers nowadays, and you've probably seen the latest news that over 2,600 more teachers retired this school year than the previous school year. So with that said, Jennifer, did it make the personnel report this time? We have an offer on the table and for your consideration for a kindergarten teacher at Garfield. And we would add an additional kindergarten at Garfield. Her emergency certification, she has a degree in early childhood, so she is very well trained, and her emergency certification has been submitted, so should not be an issue with accreditation. First grade, we have 57 spots, and somebody may ask, well, why didn't we move one of those first grade teachers to kindergarten? Well, if you consider 7 elementary schools, if we took one of those teachers, divide that by 57, if we took one of those teachers, it would put us over in first grade at a school. So it would require shifting or maybe doing a class split, and we didn't think it was the best interest of the students. At this point, after 4 years of the school has already started to do a class split or to pull a teacher, and we had the opportunity to hire a really great candidate. And in fact, she was already a paraprofessional at Garfield. Second grade, our class size limits, according to the 5-year goal that we established 3 or 4 years ago, is at 23 per class size in second grade. We have 29 available spots. Third grade, 23 per class size, 32 available spots. Fourth and fifth, our class size is at 26. And if you'll remember, we had 28 and 29 at one point. So this is our 3rd year of our 5-year goal. And we thought we may not be able to maintain that goal after the loss of so many teachers and the severe teacher shortage in Oklahoma, but we maintained it and we've been able to keep it. 6th grade, you can go ahead and look at the numbers throughout. And there's no class size limit on our 6th through 12th. Okay, this kind of compares, this does compare the grade level by year for 21, and actually that should be 20. That should be 20, sorry, I've got 21 written down on that twice. So to the right is 20. You can see that all of our grade levels are higher. 5th grade was higher last year for some reason than it is this year. We've got plenty of room in 5th grade. 9th grade was higher by 1 last year. 11th grade was higher by just a handful. And you can see that we have more students in every grade level than we did on September 1 of 2020, other than 5th, 9th, and 11th. Any questions about our enrollment? Okay, COVID update, just so you know where we are. I always report in my BOE update the last 4 weeks of the Oklahoma COVID alert system, and as you can see, last week was really, really high, and I've talked to you about this before. We can see what happens in our school by the risk level, and that just shows the State Department of Education color-coded risk level. These are not the Oklahoma State Department of Health color-coded risk levels. They just have a green, yellow, and orange. They do not have an orange 2 or a red. Here's where we are at the end of the day on 9/12, and I will tell you, we had a professional development day, so we didn't have many changes. We had some weekend changes, but last week we had a really, really good week. And if I were to hypothesize, I would think that we have tried to get the word out for people not to send their kids to school if they are symptomatic or if they are awaiting test results. And that first week when the health department required quarantines, it was a big difference. But you can see it's not horribly bad right now. I will tell you there has been some changes today, but not enough for me to go in and change. As of Sunday, we had 60 total close contact quarantines and 28 isolations in effect. And when I give a weekly update, it's just for that week. And remember, an isolation is 10 days. So some of these are carried over from the previous week. But we had a lot of students that returned the day after Labor Day, and we have a lot of students returning tomorrow as well. So here's our site percentages. Percentages out. We don't have a lot of staff out. You can see all the sites where we don't have any staff out, and I will tell you that's changed at Poe High. Today, we have a couple of staff member positive isolations in effect that will be updated on the site percentages, and Christy is going to get this chart on our website, and she will start posting our quarantine and isolation count every day and our site percentages count every day, every weekday at 4 o'clock. And she'll put a date on that and we'll update that. If you'll notice that Garfield has our highest percentage of staff out at 3.57. It's only one staff member. It's a pretty small staff. Washington Pre-K, everybody's coming back full force tomorrow. As you know, we moved to distance learning because of lack of staff. They were either in quarantine isolation, or their child was in quarantine or isolation, or there were some other health issues. And right now, our highest percentage out as far as students is concerned is at Woodlands Elementary, but we do have many of those students coming back to school tomorrow. So this data will change tomorrow for sure. So Christy, I haven't even looked. Did you go ahead and post this one today on our website? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, and you can tell the difference in weeks. You know, last week, the week of 8/30 was a pretty dreadful week for us. It was 61 positives, and our highest number of positives prior to the week of 8/30 all of last year was 35. We had 480 close contacts and 541 students affected. The week of Labor Day was a much better week. We had 20 in-school positives and 49 close contacts for 69 affected. So we're hoping for the best for tomorrow. I will tell you that the week of 8/30 was the week that the State Department of Health came out with guidance that said isolations and quarantines were required. Isolations are for a positive case. Those are always required, but they came back and told us that we had to contact trace and quarantines were required. We got notice on Thursday, I think that was the 9th, that they've changed their guidance back to recommended. We have changed our calling scripts, and we are letting our contact tracers know that that quarantines are now recommended. Isolations are still required, and doctors tell our people that, and then siblings, household members of positive cases are required as well. So since we are not the government agency who are in charge of a global pandemic or issue orders, we have no teeth in this. We are expected to contact trace but quarantines are recommended. So the guidance has changed within a matter of 9 days. And it's been hard on schools. Schools are in an impossible situation, and as you know, you approved the mask requirement with a 3-prong opt-out. Our duty is to keep our kids within the classroom safe, and we are applying common sense protocols so that we continue with learning and our students can experience their academic and extracurricular activities. So, any questions there? Okay, here's just trend data, and you can see that week, I do this every Sunday night, update the trend data. And you can see that on Sunday, 9:05, we had a high number of close contact quarantines in effect, and really a minimal number, 1.37 of our positives were in effect, but it's still almost as much as when we went to full distance learning last year. We had 11 point something percent close contacts in effect, and 3 point something positive isolations in effect. So we got really close, and Sunday night looked really good, and we're hoping for the best this week too. Any questions?
Back up to that
Okay.
last slide. So your 9/12 data is probably representative of the new mask mandate and the lack of
It
quarantines.
had only been in effect 1 day.
But we're not quarantining. It was 2 days.
Well, we did not get the guidance for the last change until Thursday. So really, we didn't have any issues. I will tell you that I see it's attributed to parents not sending their kids to school if they are symptomatic. We had a lot of that. They were still coming to school symptomatic, and something that was really unique to me was parents were sending their children to school waiting on a test result, and they've taken them for a test probably because they're symptomatic. So once they're in the classroom and they're a positive case, we have to enact or activate a contact tracing investigation. Now, contact tracing, what helped us out was Labor Day last week, because once the child is symptomatic, you track back 48 hours. With 3 days out with the holiday, it was 72, so we didn't have to backtrack on contact tracing. Same thing will happen this week. I like those 3-day weekends, especially during COVID, when we don't have to contact trace back to Friday. But again, guidance has changed to recommended. And that's it, unless you all have any questions? Discussion, comments?
Thank you. Okay. Going to number 5, consent agenda. Motion required for the approval of the consent agenda as printed or as amended. Board members may, however, call for a separate vote on any or all items listed on the consent agenda. Number 1 is agenda with commentary. And then number 2, minutes from August 9th, 2021 regular board meeting, August 23rd, 2021 special board meeting, and September 9th, 2021 special board meeting. And number 3 is contracts and agreements under $10,000. And I will need a
Move for approval.
Second.
Call to vote, Mr. Riley,
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland,
Aye.
Mrs. Troop,
Aye.
Mr. Newsom,
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye. Okay, number 6, action items. Consider and take action on the following district financial reports. We have fiscal year 21 budget amendments. We have fiscal year 21 bond reports, fiscal 22 budget amendments, sanctioning requests for 2021-2022 school year, booster club fundraisers, activity fund reports and requests, treasurer's report, and ratification and approval of payroll. And I'm going to need a motion.
I move for approval of item number 6.
A second.
Call to vote, Mrs. Zimmershed,
Aye.
Mr. Newsom,
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland,
Aye.
Mr. Riley,
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Okay. Consider and take action on estimate of needs for fiscal year 2022. The estimate of needs is a financial document required by the state law to be approved by the Board of Education. And assisted with that was Miss Shelley Era, and Brenda Story. If we have any questions, Miss
Rob,
Brenda?
any questions?
I read it, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either.
I move to approve number 2, the estimated needs for fiscal year 2022.
Second.
Call to vote, Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Okay. Consider and take action on the Gifted Advisory Committee. And it is the duty of each school district to provide gifted education programs and to serve these children who reside in the district. If we have any questions on this, it would be with Miss Amy Schwartz. Does anybody have any questions?
Motion to approve.
Did you say second?
I did.
Call to vote, Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Okay. Consider and take action on the following contract agreements. A is agreement with Catapult Learning for personnel coaching. It's will provide St. Mary's Catholic School personnel with 2 Alliance coaching days per month, and it will begin in September and end in December 2021. The total cost would be $20,000. If we have any questions, we can ask Ms. Terry. And then B is agreement with Trifera for summer refresher laptops, and that's going to go for $23,550. And these will go to Wildcat Academy in the high school. If we have any questions.
On A, that's training that we give to St. Mary's, or
And
that-
it's provided by Title I funds.
Oh. It's
required.
Yeah, it's required.
Okay.
The money off the top, they get to choose what the training is,
I see.
the professional development.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
Second.
thank you.
Call to vote, Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
Okay. Motion and vote to convey an executive session for the following purpose: to discuss a possible termination, reassignment, resignation, and employee of personnel on the attached detailed personnel report, to discuss negotiations, to discuss the purchase or appraisal of real property, and to discuss confidential conversations with board attorney concerning pending claims and litigations. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Judy?
Call to vote, Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Okay, return to open session. Recital by board president that minutes in executive session were kept by the board minutes clerk and will remain confidential. Consider and take action on recommendations for termination, reassignment, and resignation and employment of personnel. Okay, new business. We have no new business.
Need a
No, we
motion to
need a
I
approve.
think we gotta take a motion.
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve all the, number 8.
Second.
Thank you.
Call to vote, Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Okay, new business. Am I going the right way?
Did you have any?
And we do not have any new business. Okay, I need a motion to get out of here.
Make a motion to,
Second.
I'll say aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
aye.